My name is Michael Reeves. I'm 41 years old, and until a few months ago I believed my life had finally reached a quiet kind of stability. I lived in a modest two-bedroom apartment overlooking the river in Seattle, worked long but predictable hours as a systems consultant, and returned every evening to a home that felt warm because she was in it. Claire, my wife. The person I thought I understood better than I understood myself. For years I carried this naive belief that once you survive your 30s, you earn some sort of emotional immunity, that mistakes shrink, betrayal becomes less likely, and people behave with more honesty simply because they've lived long enough to know the damage lies can cause. I clung to that idea the way a drowning man clings to whatever floats. I was wrong. Completely, painfully wrong. The night everything changed still replays in my mind like a scene caught in a loop. And the worst part isn't the discovery itself. It's the shift that happened inside me afterward. A subtle, quiet snapping of something I didn't know could break. My trust in her didn't just disappear. It inverted, mutated into something cold, analytical, and dangerous. And ever since that moment, I haven't been the same man. But the story doesn't begin with the revelation. It begins long before that, with the small, almost invisible threads that eventually wove into the rope that choked whatever remained of my marriage. And it all started with something that should have been insignificant. It was a rainy Wednesday, Seattle's most common mood, when I first noticed Claire pulling away from me. She sat at the kitchen island with her laptop open, pretending to be lost in work. But there was a stiffness to her posture that didn't belong there. I had seen her focused before. This was different. This was guarded. Her phone buzzed twice in less than a minute. She reached for it too quickly. "Working mail?" I asked. She nodded without looking at me. "MMHMM? Budget revisions?" Her voice had the right tone, but the timing wasn't right. The way she locked her screen was too rehearsed, too careful. Still, I didn't say anything. Love makes you generous. Sometimes dangerously generous. Life went on. I worked, she worked, and in the evenings we performed our small rituals. Dinner, cleaning up, settling onto opposite ends of the couch. Except her smile didn't reach her eyes anymore, and she touched her phone more than she touched me. One night, while she showered, I walked past her desk and froze. She had left an open document on her screen, nothing revealing, just a list of meeting dates. But one line stood out, Q's 640 HLHL. Those initials gnawed at me. I didn't know anyone in her department with those initials. I didn't say a word. I simply memorized the time, memorized the letters, and told myself I was overthinking. But a man knows when he has stepped into the edges of a truth he isn't meant to see. That Friday I came home earlier than usual. Claire wasn't there, which didn't surprise me. She'd been working late often. But something small glittered on the hallway shelf. Her perfume. She never left the house without it. I uncapped the bottle, and that was when I realized the sprayer was still clean, dry and touched. Whatever she was doing after work, she didn't bother to dress up for it. That detail bothered me more than it should have. The shift between doubt and certainty came exactly 1 week later. Claire stepped out one evening with her typical excuse. "I might be late, don't wait up." But this time something inside me rejected the words. They felt rehearsed, hollow. I waited 15 minutes, long enough for her to feel safe, and then I followed. I wasn't proud of what I was doing. But pride is a luxury betrayed people don't get to keep. She drove across the city, past the financial district, across the bridge, straight into a quieter part of downtown. She parked near an alley behind a renovated brick building. I watched from a distance as she texted someone. Moments later, a man stepped out of a side door. Tall, clean-cut, confident. He didn't greet her like a colleague. He greeted her like a man greeting a secret. He placed a hand on her arm. She didn't hesitate. She didn't pull back. She didn't even glance over her shoulder. They disappeared inside the building. And that was the moment my heart didn't break. It hardened. I sat in my car for nearly 30 minutes. Not moving, not breathing right. as the truth rearranged itself in my chest. My marriage wasn't sick. It wasn't struggling. It wasn't drifting. It was gone, completely, quietly gone. When Claire came home later that night and kissed me with a soft, effortless lie, something shifted in me permanently. I didn't confront her. I didn't explode. I didn't collapse. I simply watched her, memorizing every move, every tone, every detail, knowing I would need all of it soon, because betrayal is not just an act, it's an architecture. And I had just found the first crack in the foundation. What I didn't know yet was that this man, this stranger, with the confident smile, wasn't just part of her affair. He was part of something much bigger. Something that would drag me into a darkness I never asked to enter. Something that would force me to confront the truth, not just about her, but about myself. I didn't sleep that night. My body lay still, but my mind kept circling the same questions like a wounded animal searching for a way out. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, not the real one, not the one I thought I knew, but the version of it that had been slowly revealing itself over the past week. A stranger pretending to be someone I could trust. A stranger sharing her life with another man. By morning, the anger had settled into something colder, sharper. Not rage, resolve. And with it came a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I woke up before Julia did. She was curled up on her side, hair spilling over the pillow, breathing calm and steady. For a moment, I just watched her. It's funny how deception doesn't erase tenderness immediately. Some instinctive part of you tries to cling to the versions of people you loved before they broke you. But then you remember the truth and everything becomes unbearable. I went downstairs, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table staring at the steam rising from the mug. The house felt different since the night before, like every room knew something I didn't want to admit. I kept replaying her lies in my head, trying to understand how long she'd been living two lives while expecting me to stay blind. I had collected enough evidence to confront her, but confrontation was the easy path. Too easy. I knew myself well enough to understand that anger burns fast. What I needed wasn't fire. It was strategy. Julia wasn't just cheating. She wasn't just bored. Something else was moving beneath the surface. Something that involved Ethan, her job, and a series of meetings she never intended for me to know about. And if there's one thing I've learned in life, it's this: you don't strike until you understand the whole board. So instead of exploding, I began observing, really observing. When Julie came downstairs, she greeted me with a soft morning, leaning in to kiss me. I let her. Every instinct in me recoiled, but I kept my expression neutral. She didn't notice anything. Her ability to lie so smoothly, so casually, made my stomach turn. She went through her routine: coffee, quick glance at her phone, a slight smile she tried to hide, a nervous swipe of her thumb as she typed a message. Then the phone flipped face down on the counter. There it was. A simple gesture, but one I now understood as clearly as a confession. By the time she left for work, I had already logged into her email again and copied everything I needed for the next phase. But something had changed. A folder I hadn't seen before appeared in her cloud backups. Hidden, encrypted. It took me 30 minutes to break into it, but when I did, the contents shifted everything I thought I knew. Inside were PDFs, forwarded documents, meeting notes, none of them romantic, none of them personal. They were corporate, sensitive, some marked confidential, internal use only, and several with Ethan's name attached. This wasn't an affair anymore. It was collaboration, a secret project, something involving money transfers and risk exposure reports, something she had no reason to hide unless she wasn't supposed to have them. I realized then that Julia wasn't just betraying me. She was betraying someone else too. Her company, her boss, maybe even the law. And Ethan wasn't just a lover. He was a partner in something bigger. The betrayal between them and me was emotional. The betrayal between them and the outside world was professional. To different layers of deceit, woven into one. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the documents. My pulse quickened, but not from fear, from opportunity. If they thought I was the kind of man who would simply cry, yell, break down, or walk away quietly, they hadn't understood me at all. What they were doing wasn't just immoral. It was reckless, dangerous. And if it came to light, it wouldn't just ruin their affair, it would ruin their careers, their reputations, their lives. The thought didn't make me smile, but it did calm me. For the first time in days, I felt a sense of control settling back into my hands. Before anything else, I needed to confirm what I had found. So I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in months, my former colleague, Ryan, a cybersecurity consultant with access to networks and systems I wasn't supposed to see anymore. "Can you run a trace on some emails?" I asked him. He agreed, no questions asked. Ryan had always liked me more than most people in our old office. While he worked on his end, I kept digging. The more I looked, the more obvious it became that Julia and Ethan weren't careful. They thought secrecy meant deleting texts, meeting in hotels, and using personal emails. But they forgot the rule I live by. Every secret leaves a trace. Around noon, Ryan called me back. "Daniel," he said slowly, "whatever you're looking into, it's not small. These emails come from a project tied to high-level financial audits. If they're leaking this stuff, they're looking at serious charges." I said nothing. I didn't need to. "And the guy, Ethan, he's already under internal review. Someone flagged irregular activity last quarter." The puzzle pieces began fitting themselves together. Julia wasn't just involved, she was in deep, whether willingly or manipulated. I didn't know yet, but it didn't matter. She had chosen this path. By the time Julie came home that evening, I knew more about her secret life than she realized. She smiled at me, kissed my cheek, and asked how my day was. I pretended everything was normal. I cooked dinner. We talked. She laughed, and the whole time, behind her eyes, I saw the truth she thought she'd buried. When she turned away to load the dishwasher, I watched her closely. The way her shoulders relaxed, the way she hummed softly to herself like someone who believed she was safe. The irony was almost poetic. Later that night, while she slept, I continued building the file. What I had now wasn't just proof of infidelity. It was leverage powerful enough to collapse the life she'd built brick by brick. But I wasn't ready to use it. Not yet. First, I needed to understand the one piece of the puzzle I still couldn't figure out. Why? Why risk everything? Why betray me? Why get involved with Ethan of all people? And why did all of this start 3 months ago, right after she got that call she refused to talk about? Answers were coming. I could feel it, but the truth, when it finally revealed itself, wasn't at all what I expected. It was worse, much worse. I didn't sleep the night after I saw Lucas leaving the hotel. I lay there in the dark, fully awake, listening to the slow hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the distant passing of cars outside. Everything in my house felt suddenly foreign. The walls, the furniture, even the shadows seemed wrong, as if the betrayal had seeped into the very structure of the place. My name is still the same. My age is still 41, but nothing else in my life feels remotely recognizable anymore. I used to believe my home was a sanctuary. Now it felt like a stage set built on lies. And the worst part was that I wasn't even sure whose lies I was living with anymore, Marissa's, Lucas's, or my own for pretending not to notice the signs earlier. When morning finally came, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the half-empty cup of cold coffee. I couldn't bring myself to finish. My mind replayed every conversation I had with Marissa over the last few months, looking for the cracks I'd ignored. The late evenings, the sudden coldness, the way she smiled at her phone a second too long, all the warnings were there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. Round noon, I finally forced myself to move. If I sat there any longer, I knew I'd slip into the kind of spiral that leaves a man unable to recover. I needed answers, not emotional ones, but real, concrete facts. I needed to understand why Lucas was involved, why the hotel, why she had started acting like a stranger in her own home. There's a particular kind of calm a betrayed man learns to build. It's not peace, it's control. Cold, deliberate control. That's what kept me moving. First, I checked her laptop. I'd never invaded her privacy before, but that version of me was gone. She wasn't careful with passwords. She used variations of the same three, and it took me less than a minute to get in. Most of her files were work-related, spreadsheets, presentation drafts. Each are reports. But one folder caught my eye, hidden deep inside another folder with a harmless name, Q1_planning_notes, a name designed to be ignored. Inside were dozens of documents, all of them encrypted, all of them locked with a password I didn't know. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Betrayal was one thing, deception at this scale was another. Marissa wasn't just cheating. She was hiding something bigger, something organized, something she never intended for me to see. And then I noticed something else, metadata. The last time many of those files had been opened wasn't by Marissa. It was by Lucas. I stared at the screen for a long time, my pulse steady but heavy. This wasn't an affair, or at least, not only an affair. They were working together on something confidential, something she didn't want anyone at her company to know about, something that could get both of them fired. Or worse. I took photos of the folders, of the file names, of the timestamps, not because I knew yet what I was going to do, but because I needed evidence. The same way someone lost in the woods leaves a breadcrumb trail behind. That evening, when Marissa came home, she didn't look like a woman guilty of anything. She looked tired, almost frail. Her keys clinked softly as she dropped them into the bowl by the door. "Rough day?" I asked, forcing my voice to sound casual. She nodded, but her eyes didn't meet mine. "Just a lot of work. I'm exhausted." It was the same rehearsed line she'd been using for weeks. And for the first time, I noticed something else in her expression. Fear. Not of me, of something else entirely. That's when the pieces shifted again, forming a more complicated picture. Whatever she was hiding wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just a secret relationship. There was something dangerous underneath it, something that made her hands tremble slightly when she poured herself a glass of water. She wasn't distant because she was in love with someone else. She was distant because she was afraid of something she couldn't tell me. But fear doesn't erase betrayal. It just adds more layers to it. Later that night, when she fell asleep, I went downstairs and opened the small lockbox where I kept old paperwork, bank files, forgotten things. I wasn't looking for money or documents. I was looking for the version of myself that could navigate this without crumbling. And I found something else instead, a sealed envelope, one addressed to me, in Marissa's handwriting. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. My hands felt heavier than they should. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Her handwriting again, shaky, rushed. It read, "If something happens to me, don't trust Lucas, and don't trust the company. I'm sorry." No explanations, no details, just a warning. And suddenly everything I thought I understood, the cheating, the hotel, the secrecy, broke apart again into something far more dangerous. Because now the question wasn't just why did she betray me? Now it was, what is she afraid of? And why am I being warned? I spent most of that night awake, lying in bed beside a woman I no longer recognized. The shadows on the ceiling shifted with the passing cars outside, carving shapes that almost looked like answers, except none of them were the ones I wanted. Amelia breathed softly beside me, calm, peaceful, completely unaware that the ground beneath her life had already begun to crack. I stared at her silhouette, the curve of her shoulder, the faint rise and fall of her chest. This was the same woman I once believed I would grow old with, the same woman whose laughter used to soften my entire day. And yet now, even the sound of her breathing felt like a lie. It's strange how quickly love can turn into something sharp, something that cuts every time you look at it. By morning, the decision was already made inside me. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. I wasn't going to confront her with anger. I wasn't going to break down. I wasn't going to demand explanations she'd twist into excuses. No, I was going to let the truth do the work for me. That first step was to understand the connection between her and Ethan. Their affair was obvious, painfully, disgustingly obvious, but something deeper ran beneath it, something professional, hidden, coordinated, something risky enough that they were willing to ruin everything to protect it. I needed proof, real proof. So at noon I drove to Amelia's office, not inside, just far enough to watch. I stayed in my car with tinted windows, the kind you buy when you no longer trust the world enough to let it see you. She walked out for lunch exactly at 12:37 p.m., alone. No Ethan. Her face was tight, distracted, as if she was already rehearsing some lie she'd planned to tell me later. She didn't see me, but Ethan did. He stepped out from the side entrance, talking rapidly into his phone. He was irritated, pacing, frowning, rubbing the bridge of his nose like a man surrounded by problems he caused himself. And then he said something that made my entire body go still. No, she doesn't know he found out. She thinks everything is under control. Amelia. My heartbeat slowed, not sped up. I lowered the window just slightly, the cold air rushing in. Ethan kept talking. I told you if this goes wrong, we're both finished. The audit is getting too close. I already moved the files. Yes, all of them. She panicked, but I told her I'd take care of it. Audit, files, panic. So it wasn't just an affair. It was something illegal. The kind of illegal that destroys careers, reputations, entire futures. I leaned back in the seat, absorbing every word, every implication, every fragment of the truth. Suddenly, everything made sense. Why Amelia was restless, why she kept secrets, why she avoided any conversation that touched finances or work. They weren't partners in love. They were partners in crime. And she thought she could fool me. She thought I was just the quiet man she lived with, the predictable one, the harmless one. She forgot that the quiet ones are the ones who watch, who notice, who remember. That night I didn't speak to her, not even a little. Silence can be more frightening than shouting, and by the way she kept glancing at me over dinner, she felt it. Her fork paused midair. Her eyes searched mine for something familiar, warmth, affection, reassurance. But there was nothing left in me to give her. She finally broke the silence first. Daniel, you've been distant lately. Did something happen? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I lifted my glass, took a slow sip of water, set it down, and looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. You tell me, I said softly. It was enough. Her entire body stiffened. She wasn't used to uncertainty. She wasn't used to me questioning her. She forced a smile, too bright, too quick. I'm just tired, she said. Work has been overwhelming. A lie, a small one, but still a lie. I nodded as if accepting it. She relaxed, just a little. Later that night, when she fell asleep, I went into the living room and opened the folder I had been building for weeks. Messages, records, screenshots, phone logs, audio clips, timeline analysis. Everything. When you've been betrayed, you learn that truth becomes a weapon. But the timing of that weapon matters even more. The next morning, I left early. I drove downtown, not to Amelia's office, but to the bank she and Ethan worked with. I walked inside calmly, approached the counter, and asked to speak with someone from the internal audit department. The woman behind the counter gave me a polite smile and told me to wait. A man in his 50s, sharp suit, tired eyes, the kind of person who's seen too many people try to lie to him, stepped out and introduced himself. Mr. Price, what can I help you with? I placed the folder on the table. His eyes narrowed. Those are internal documents, he said slowly, cautiously. I know, I replied. And I didn't take them. But someone in your company did? And they've been covering their tracks for months. He opened the folder. And the look that crossed his face was all the confirmation I needed: shock, confusion, calculation, and then something that almost resembled fear. "Do you understand what this is?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Do you?" He exhaled, leaned back, looked at me as if he was seeing a weapon disguised as a man. "This is serious." I nodded. "So is betrayal." He studied me for a long moment. "What do you want us to do with this?" "Do your job," I said. "Everything else will fall into place." I left before he could ask anything more. I didn't need thanks. I didn't need involvement. I didn't need to watch the storm as it formed, because I knew one thing: by the time Amelia realized what was happening, it would already be too late. And for the first time since all of this began, I felt something close to peace. I didn't sleep the night before everything finally collapsed, not because of fear, but because of a strange, sharp clarity that kept me awake like a second heartbeat. By then, the truth wasn't a collection of clues anymore. It was a living thing, breathing in the dark corners of my house, waiting for its moment to step into the light. My name is Michael Rowan. I'm 41, and the man I had been before all this started, quiet, trusting, steady, no longer existed. The version of me that remained was something leaner, stripped down, sharpened by betrayal. I didn't want revenge anymore. What I wanted was something deeper: closure, the kind that leaves no unfinished edges. By the time Amelia walked into the house that evening, the storm had already begun around her. She just didn't know it yet. I watched her slip off her coat, shaking off the cold, her movements rehearsed and casual. There was a moment, a brief, fragile second, where I felt the echo of who we used to be. But nostalgia is a dangerous kind of poison, and I had learned to stop drinking it. She noticed the envelope on the dining table before she noticed the expression on my face. "What's this?" she asked, her voice tightening at the edges. "You should read it," I said. She stared at me for a moment, searching for something she wouldn't find anymore. Then she opened it. Inside were copies of the hotel logs, the messages with Ethan, the financial documents, and the mail chain she thought she had deleted. Her breath hitched, barely audible, but unmistakable. A tiny collapse. "You went through my accounts," she whispered, guilt and panic tangling together. "You left me no choice." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of every lie, every stolen hour, every shift in her smile I had forced myself to overlook. She opened her mouth to defend herself, to start another script of excuses, but I raised a hand. "Don't," I said. "Not tonight. Not anymore." She sank into a chair, the weight of everything sinking into her at once. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I simply let the truth sit between us, a living thing that neither of us could ignore. "Michael, I didn't mean for it to go that far," she said, her voice soft, fragile. "That's the worst part," I replied. "You didn't mean any of it. Not the beginning. Not the lies. Not the betrayal. You drift through people's lives like smoke, and you don't even realize when you suffocate them." She looked away, wiping at her eyes. Guilt suited her more honestly than love ever did. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. "That's the point." I stood, walked to the kitchen drawer, and pulled out a second envelope, the one she didn't know existed, the one containing printouts of her messages with Ethan about the offshore account, the deal they were manipulating behind their company's back, the one that put both of them at risk of losing far more than a relationship. Her face drained of color. Where did you get that?" "You made one mistake," I said. "You underestimated how much I pay attention." She reached for the papers, but I pulled them back. "I'm not going to the company," I said. "Not yet. Not unless I have to." Fear flickered in her eyes, real fear, not the performance she had given me before. "What do you want me to do?" she whispered. "Pack your things tonight." She froze. "Michael, please. This is the last time I'm asking," I said softly, almost kindly. "Leave before the fallout hits both of you harder than you can imagine." I didn't expect gratitude, and she didn't offer any. She just walked down the hall slowly, as if mourning something she had killed herself. When the front door finally closed behind her, the house didn't feel empty. It felt honest. For the first time in months, I could breathe without something twisting in my chest. I walked into the living room, turned off the light, and sat in the dark, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside. I wasn't healed. I wasn't fixed, but I wasn't broken anymore either. The truth had cut me open, but it also set me free.